Jesus knew about the Archons, and he gave the chosen ones exactly 2 words to survive them. Not a parable this time, not a story about seeds or lost sheep. Just 2 words, spoken quietly, meant only for the ones ready to actually hear them. You know that pressure behind your own thoughts that doesn't feel like yours? The voice telling you you're behind, you're small, you're not enough? That's not just overthinking. That's not just modern anxiety. There's an old name for what's actually pulling those strings. The Gnostics called them Archons. And Jesus told the chosen ones exactly how to slip out of their grip. I don't think you're watching this by accident. Somewhere in you, something's already awake enough to be looking for this. And that's precisely what the old texts meant by chosen. Not luck, not bloodline, just readiness. Jesus handed this group 2 words, hidden in plain sight inside the Gospels, buried deeper later by a tradition that didn't want you noticing what they actually meant. I'll give you those words tonight, stay with me. But first, you need to understand exactly what the Archons are and why Jesus thought 2 words were enough to break them. Let's start here, because this word gets thrown around and rarely explained right. Archons aren't demons in the way you've been taught to picture demons. No horns, no fire, no cartoon evil. In Gnostic teaching, the Archons are something quieter and, honestly, scarier. They're described as rulers of illusion, architects of forgetting. Their entire function is to keep you convinced that the world you see with your eyes is the only world there is, and that you are small inside it. The Gnostics were an early spiritual movement, active roughly between the 1st and 3rd centuries, who believed something radical for their time. They believed the material world wasn't evil exactly. It was a kind of fog, a prison built not from stone, but from forgetting. And the Archons, in their teaching, were the wardens of that fog. Not torturers, just jailers who never let you notice the bars. Here's my honest opinion on this, and I'll say it plainly. I think the Archons were never meant to be understood as external beings floating somewhere above the clouds. I think they were describing something psychological and spiritual at the same time, a force, a pattern, maybe even a frequency that thrives on your forgetting who you really are. Think about your own life for a second. Think about the version of you that scrolls at 1 a.m., comparing your life to strangers. Think about the version of you that shrinks in a room, convinced you're less than everyone else. Think about the anxious loop that plays the same fear over and over, keeping you from doing the one thing your soul actually wants to do. That's not random. That's not just modern life. I believe that's Archon activity, dressed up in a new century's clothing. And this is the part that I find unsettling every time I sit with it. This teaching almost didn't survive to reach you. Someone a long time ago decided this knowledge was too dangerous for ordinary hands. So it was pushed underground, buried, nearly erased. I want you to sit with this for a second, because it matters more than most people realize. For over 1,000 years, entire Gospels, real texts, written by real early spiritual communities, were declared heretical and quietly removed from the story most people were taught. Not because they were false, because they were dangerous to the structure that formed after Jesus' death. A structure that needed obedience more than it needed awakened people. Here's what I believe, and you can disagree with me if you want. I think the parts of Jesus' teaching that pointed inward, that told you the truth was inside you, not outside in an institution, were the parts most likely to get buried. Not because they were wrong, because they were too powerful to control. Think about what it means for a teaching to survive underground for over a millennium. Think about the communities who copied these texts by hand, who risked everything just to keep a sentence alive. That's not the behavior of people protecting a myth. That's the behavior of people protecting something true enough to die for. And inside those buried texts, one phrase kept surfacing again and again, attributed directly to Jesus. Not shouted from a mountain to the crowds. Spoken quietly, deliberately, to the ones who were paying close enough attention to receive it. That phrase is what we're building toward. And once you hear where it comes from, you'll understand why it was never meant for everyone, only for the ones ready to actually use it. Here's something most people miss about how Jesus actually taught, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. He didn't teach one way. He taught 2 ways at the same time, to 2 different audiences standing in the same crowd. To the masses, he spoke in parables. Stories about seeds and soil, about lost sheep, about wine and old skins. Simple, symbolic, safe, digestible. The kind of teaching you can hear once and walk away feeling comforted without ever being changed. But to a smaller group, the the ones the old texts call the chosen, not because of bloodline or status, but because of readiness. He spoke plainly, directly. He gave them what Gnostic tradition calls Gnosis. Not belief, not doctrine, knowledge. The kind of knowing that doesn't ask you to have faith in something outside yourself. It asks you to remember something you already carry inside you. That distinction matters more than almost anything else in this conversation. Belief asks you to accept something on authority. Gnosis asks you to recognize something as already true, buried under layers of forgetting. One keeps you dependent. The other sets you free. And I'll be honest with you, this is where my own opinion gets a little sharp. I think most modern spirituality has quietly trained people to consume belief instead of pursuing Gnosis, to follow instead of remember, to wait for permission instead of waking up. And I think that's exactly the outcome the Archons would want, if the old teaching is right about what they are. Jesus, according to this hidden thread of tradition, wasn't interested in building followers who simply believed things about him. He was interested in awakening people who could recognize the same truth in themselves that he carried in himself. And there is one phrase, 2 words, that carries the entire weight of that recognition. He said it about himself over and over, recorded plainly in the Gospel of John. But almost no one has been taught to hear it the way the chosen ones were meant to hear it. It's time you did. The 2 words are, I am. Say that out loud right now, if you're somewhere you can. I am. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says it again and again, in ways that would have stopped a careful listener cold. I am the light of the world. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the bread of life. I am the resurrection. On the surface, these read like descriptions, like Jesus is listing job titles for himself. But that's the surface reading, the parable version, the version for the crowd. There's a deeper current running underneath every single one of these lines, and once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. Look at the actual structure of the phrase. Not I will be. Not I was. I am. Present tense. No past, no future, no waiting. Just pure, undivided being. In the esoteric reading of this teaching, I is not your name, your job, your body, your bank account, or your history. I is the eternal witness underneath all of that, the quiet awareness that has been present through every version of you that ever existed. And AM is not a claim about what you're doing. It's a declaration of pure existence, before language, before fear, before the noise the world keeps layering on top of you. Put together, I am isn't a sentence. It's a doorway. Here's what I personally believe, and I say this with real conviction. I think Jesus wasn't only describing himself when he said those words. I think he was demonstrating something for the chosen ones to eventually claim for themselves. Not, I am Jesus. Just, I am. Full stop. No qualifiers. No apologies. No small print. That declaration, spoken with real presence, is not a boast. It's a remembering. And remembering, according to this entire tradition, is the exact thing the Archons cannot survive. Let's connect this back to where we started, because now it should hit differently. The Archons' entire power, according to Gnostic teaching, comes from one source, forgetting. They don't need to attack you directly. They just need to keep you convinced you are only your fear, only your body, only your lack, only your smallness. As long as you're convinced of that, you'll stay exactly where you are, asleep, scrolling, shrinking, doubting. But I am refuses that whole structure in 2 syllables. Every time fear tells you are not enough, and you quietly answer inside yourself, I am. Full, complete, whole. You are pulling the rug out from under the entire illusion the Archons depend on. You're not arguing with the fear. You're not debating it. You're simply remembering something older and truer than the fear itself. I think this is why Jesus repeated it so often in the Gospel of John. Not for style. Not by accident. I believe it was a spiritual technology, disguised as a simple statement, dropped into scripture in plain sight for anyone patient enough to notice the pattern. Think about the moments in your own life when anxiety spirals hardest. Late at night, comparing yourself to someone online, convinced you're failing, behind, unworthy. That's Archon static, dressed up as your own inner voice, so convincing you never think to question who's actually speaking. I am cut straight through that static, not because it's magic, not because saying 2 words rewires your entire life overnight, but because it interrupts the forgetting, even for a moment. And in Gnostic teaching, a single moment of true remembering is enough to start loosening the whole trap. That's the part one find most beautiful about this teaching, honestly. It was never about escaping to somewhere else. It was always about remembering who was here the whole time, underneath the noise. Now let's talk about how to actually use it. Here's what I want you to do tonight, and I mean tonight, not eventually, not when things calm down. Before you sleep, find a few minutes of stillness. Turn the phone face down. Let the room go quiet. And in that quiet, say the words, out loud if you can, silently if you can't. I am. Not, I am tired. Not, I am stressed. Not, I am behind on everything. Just, I am. Let it sit there unfinished, uncluttered. Let it exist without anything attached to it. You might feel resistance the first time. That's normal. The forgetting doesn't let go easily. It's been running the show a long time. But stay with it. Say it slowly. Feel the weight of each word, rather than rushing past it like a habit. Personally, I don't treat this as a magic spell, and I don't want you to either. I don't think 2 words instantly erase anxiety, or fix your whole life by morning. That's not what this is. What I believe it does is smaller, and honestly more powerful than a quick fix. It interrupts the automatic forgetting, even briefly. It reminds the part of you that's been buried under noise that it's still there. Still whole. Still present. Do this every night, and something shifts slowly, quietly, the way real change usually does. Not fireworks. Not overnight transformation. Just a steady loosening of the grip that fear and comparison and smallness have had on you for years. This isn't a new invention. You're not doing something Jesus never modeled. You're continuing exactly what the chosen ones were taught to do 2,000 years ago, remembering on purpose instead of forgetting by default. You felt it before this video started. That pressure behind your own thoughts that never quite felt like yours. Now you have language for it. Now you know it has a name in an old, buried tradition, the Archons, and you know the 2 words that were handed quietly and deliberately to the ones ready to hear them. I believe this reached you tonight for a reason. Not because of an algorithm. Not because of luck. I think some part of you has been circling this truth for a while, waiting for someone to finally say it plainly instead of wrapping it in more noise. If this teaching landed somewhere real in you, say the words tonight. And if you want more of these buried, hidden teachings, the ones history tried to erase but couldn't quite finish the job on, subscribe and come back for the next one. Comment, I am, below if you feel this one land in your chest the way I think it will. You are not who the forgetting told you that you were. I am. Say it tonight.